So before I get started explaining our company, I'm going to noodle around through these pedals for a little while, and you'll kind of get an idea of what we're about. So I started, really, I got my start with pedals in like 2004. It was kind of when I started tinkering around. I've been a touring musician for pretty much most of my life until the last 10 years. And a graphic designer with no real background in electronics, but I had this DoD 250 overdrive, like an old 70s one that I really liked a lot. And it broke, and I bought a replacement for it, probably from like Guitar Center, Musician's Friend, something like that, and just didn't like it as much. It just didn't have the same sound. So I just looked up the schematic on the internet, found it on General Guitar Gadgets, and figured out what was wrong with it, and kind of got bitten by the bug. I was like super stoked, like, oh shit, I figured that out. Then I built myself a clone of it, and that was pretty exciting, and that started me down this rabbit hole. I started building pedals for friends and putting them up on eBay. That was like around 2005, and it was like the first time that I used the name Earthquaker Devices on products. But it wasn't really like until like 2006-ish, like where we started to like develop a line. Like the first pedals were the Hoof, which is still in production today. It was a little bit different back then, and then we had a pedal called Tusk, and then an Overdrive. And kind of quickly like escalated. I was posting a lot on the forum called Harmony Central, and there's like just like a lot of like-minded nerds on there, and like getting instant messages, and then I'd be like, sure, I'll make you a pedal, and then that's just kind of how it got started. And then it quickly escalated, and before I knew it, accidentally had a company. Yeah, just had it was just a lot of long hours working by myself in the basement, just hand etching circuit boards, drilling them out, drilling all the enclosures, spray painting them like an idiot in my garage with no mask, and using like water slide decals and stuff like that. But it was, it was a lot of fun. It was very exciting to like be able to make these things that other people could make music with, and they were getting excited and like getting a lot of really positive feedback. It was like a lot of long hours. My wife, Julie Robbins, over here would like come home from work and like help me assemble the pedals and stuff. It was, it was a big process. And that's pretty much like what the first 5 years of Earthquaker was like. It wasn't until 2010 where we got our first employee. His name is Jeff France. If you've ever seen our demo videos, he is the hand. He also did a lot of the audio, well, all the audio for years. And once he came into the picture, like we really got a lot busier. We were able to make more stuff. This was still in my basement. 2010, and by 2012 we had like 9 people working in my basement, which was like the size. If you doubled this area, like that's how big it was. Everyone was just kind of around. And then it was like, finally time to move out. We moved into our first shop in 2012. Julie came on full time at that point to run the business. And she is the CEO of Earthquaker today. Make sure we keep heading in the right direction, keeps everybody in line. And we were in that shop for about two years, and we had grown to a team of like, how many people would you say? Like,
when we were still at the old shop?
Yeah.
I think we had 25 people there.
Yeah, like 25 people, and like we quickly outgrew that. And in 2015, we moved down the street to what is our current day headquarters. It's I don't know how to translate this, but a 15,000 square foot facility. And in 2020, we actually purchased another building to do all of our machining for our enclosures. So we do all the drilling, the powder coating, and the printing in-house there. And at our headquarters, we do all of the assembly and testing, boxing, shipping. And that is something that I think is kind of unique about our company. We kind of all grew up in the world of punk rock in DIY, and very much like, we'll figure this out. We don't need any help. It's going to be cool. Don't worry. Oh, we bought $1 million machine, no problem, we'll figure it out. And it is true, it's what we did. And today we are a team of about 35 people, and we just do every single thing in-house except for manufacture the raw PCBs, which you don't really find a lot of companies doing that. Yeah, and we have a lot of really cool people working for us, almost all musicians and artists who are self-taught at what they do. Yeah, that's Earthquaker Devices in a nutshell. There'll be time at the end for questions, but does anybody have any questions at all now? Over here.
I'm wondering, you started out with a DoD?
Yes.
Nowadays, you're known for, well, partially known for pretty out there stuff.
Yeah.
The Rainbow Machine. Do you remember when you kind of first ventured into that side of things?
Yeah, well, the Rainbow Machine itself, I've always had an interest in like bizarre effects, I think, but like they have to be usable. Like there has to be something that, like, at least to me, like whatever my ears are, something that could be used in a musical context, that like you could play in a song with a hook or something like that, but can also do some really weird stuff. But the Rainbow Machine I made in like 2009, I think, 2009, and it sat around on a breadboard, which is what we use for development. Like we still do everything. I still do everything by hand on a breadboard, as opposed, like nowadays you can model a circuit before you ever built it. We'll tell you if it's electronically sound. I like the fun in just being like, well, yeah, maybe this works, maybe it won't work. And then I end up with these like massive messes of wires and parts that only I understand how it's all cobbled together. And then you get the fun part there is like, then you get to go, I get to go and like retrace my steps to do the schematic. And like, that's always a chore. It's kind of the danger of working with the breadboards. But this thing, in fact, had I modeled the circuit, the computer would have just exploded. Like smoke would have come out of it. Like, what are you doing? This is stupid. This is a bad idea. But it sat on the breadboard for a long time, and I would show it to people when they would come by my house, and they'd be like, that's awesome, but what the hell is anybody going to do with that thing? And I was like, yeah, I don't know, but someone could use it. So then I think I fine-tuned it at some point where it started to make a lot more sense. But yeah, I would say like that's the point where I started like focusing on kind of weird stuff. So that existed for a while, and then I was also working on the Bit Commander, which by today's standards I think is relatively tame. But at the time I feel like it was kind of like, whoa, what is that? And then followed by the Organizer, which was another kind of pitch shifting effect. It was also pretty out there, I think, for pitch shifters. And again, today, like anything is possible, but I still think these pedals have like kind of a unique voice and a unique way of functioning. So yeah, there's that.
Pretty early on.
Yeah, so pretty early on. And I still like am very interested in making like really weird stuff, but I also have tended to lean a little bit more towards the like, here's some basics, but there's like some interesting thing about each one. Which is a great segue into this pedal board I have in front of me. Thank you. Unless anybody else has any questions about that. Good.
Rehearse that.
Yeah. Good job. So this pedal board down here is pretty much our last 2 years worth of releases, plus our most misunderstood pedal, the one we were just talking about, the Rainbow Machine.
And I'm gonna walk you through like my favorite settings, and I'll explain how they work. In the last year, we've done a handful of pedals that I didn't really intend to be kind of a series, but I think people caught on pretty quickly, like, oh, they kind of have the same feature set, like the functionality to this, and it's like a platform series, which is fascinating to me because it's what I was referring to it to in-house, but also telling people like,
publicly don't ever say this is a platform, like they're each their own thing. It's a series. And this, I came up with this idea in like 2020 when we kind of all moved back into our houses, and we had all our employees building pedals at home, and I had moved my office back into the basement where we once had the shop, sitting around in my pajamas all day long, like, what now? This is weird. Let me think of a million pedal ideas. I was trying to think of like something that could be like really like interesting but not overwhelming for a user, like something that could be like the basics of like a guitar pedal board, like a delay, a reverb, chorus, filter effects, things like that. But there could be like a twist to each one that would keep them all unique. And then they would share a common functionality. And that common functionality is assignable expression control. So you can just assign it to any of the important controls on the pedal. And then presets. But presets in a way that like I could understand. And I am kind of archaic in this world of things. Like I own pedals that have presets and MIDI functionality, and I just pretend like it doesn't exist. Like there is a piece of me that still just wishes every amp had one knob and guitars had no knobs, and you just plug into it and like you don't have to think about it. And I just found that like a lot of gear was like leading towards this like menu divey stuff where you have to like open up a bunch of manuals and learn all these things, and you can save 126 presets because of course you're going to remember all 126 of your presets and exactly where they are and what they do. Like of course you are. No one can. And if you can, congratulations, you're very, very smart and patient. So my idea was 6. You get 6 presets and you get to choose them with the pot. So it feels very archaic and analog. But these pedals are also like, simple but useful. There's enough interesting stuff that you would like be able to save just a handful of presets and be able to access them on the fly while you're playing. So we kind of set about figuring out how to do that. In that, I'll start with the Silos. The Silos is a delay pedal that we just released a couple months ago, and it was actually the first of these products that I worked on. And what it is a 3-mode delay. It's digital delay, analog delay, and tape delay. And then it has tap tempo, small form factor, user assignable expression, presets. The digital delay is kind of like, like I'm a fan of like the Boss DD6, like that kind of delay where it can do like the stutter and it's like a really strong repeat when it just keeps going and going. But typically in a digital delay, I think like the high end like kind of builds up and it starts to become harsh, and that's what kind of sounds a little fake to your ears. So what this does is like the repeats stay strong, but they gradually roll off the high end with each repeat. And I'll show you, that's what I was using in the beginning, but I'll show you anyway. And it starts to become more obvious with like overdrive. The pedal is also buffer bypass, so that it decays naturally. I have a very long decay time, so it gets to here forever, I think. But yeah, you hear how it kind of like you hear the first couple repeats, and it's enough to play against and play with, but they kind of just immediately go to the background, so it doesn't overpower your signal. So that was like kind of the goal of the digital delay, and then the analog delay. This is the middle position, is modeled after my favorite analog delay, and it's actually the first pedal I ever bought, which is a KMD analog delay. I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but it's essentially like a Boss DM2, but it had a tone control. So you could kind of make it really dark and murky or kind of bright and noisy. That's really your options. And the weird thing that they decided to do is when you bypass it, everything is removed from the signal path except the tone control, which is I didn't know for years. Like I toured with this delay forever, and like sometimes I'd be like, "Why is my guitar so dark?" And had no actual idea that this thing was constantly active in the signal path until I had owned it for a few years. Doesn't do that, but what I kind of modeled it after that. It's like it kind of has like a strong mid-range peak in it, and it's a little bit dirty in its repeats. I like your shirt. So you hear like it's just like a murkier delay. It's a little bit darker, but the mid range is a little bit more present as opposed to like the top end. And then the final mode is tape delay, which I kind of took all the things I like about. I have two Echoplexes, EP3 and EP4, and then a Roland Space Echo, and then these two oil can delays, a Telray Add an Echo and a Telray Organ Tone, which are like they're kind of oil can delays, but they're also just kind of weird modulation effects, like kind of a dark cloud of reverb and very murky. And I kind of try to mash all of that stuff up into like one delay, really. And this is what this sounds like. That's what the analog delay sounds like. This is what the tape delay sounds like. So you hear how like it just forms a kind of a dark, murky cloud underneath what you're playing. And to me, like if you set that just right in the mix, it can just sound like this big, echoey reverb underneath. But if you hit, the right notes, they'll pop out, and you'll get these cool delay effects. So that's silos in a nutshell. The second pedal that I worked on with this is the AURELIUS, and I put a bunch of time into this one because I was really into my Boss CE1. It was like the old big green chorus. A lot of people really like the preamp from that. Like a lot of times you'll see it on people's boards and they're not even using the chorus effect. They just like the preamp, which I think is always on in it. But the chorus effect in that pedal is really interesting, I think, in which it's both like chorus, it's like chorus vibrato and flange, sort of. So with the AURELIUS, I wanted to kind of incorporate like just like that style of effects in it, but kind of put a little bit of a twist. So there are 3 modes on this pedal also, named vibrato, chorus, and rotary. Vibrato is really the chorus. Chorus is really the flanger. Rotary is actually rotary. Has nothing to do with the Boss CE1. Makes perfect sense, right? Of course. So what ends up happening, like how they ended up being vibrato and chorus, when they're really chorus and flange, is that's kind of how like that Boss works. Like, they're not all the same. Like some of them are kind of off. Mine is very pronounced flange. So the way that the AURELIUS works is in the vibrato mode, it's really chorus. Like it has 3 controls: balance, which is the mix of the effect, width, which controls the depth, like how much the LFO will modulate the signal, and rate, which is the speed of the LFO. In the vibrato mode, width, as you bring it up, it's chorus all the way up until it gets to about 3 o'clock, and then it starts to bring the clean signal out, and it turns into vibrato. So I'll show you like what that sounds like with a low width setting, and then all the way up. it's like a traditional kind of chorus effect. And then it's vibrato when you bring the width up. It takes the clean signal out of it. So that's like the interesting thing in this mode. Because that's what, I mean, I'm pretty sure most people who play guitar kind of know, like a chorus is, a vibrato and a chorus are the same thing, essentially. It's just one has the clean signal mixed with it. Chorus mode. Lower width setting, chorus. But you hear it kind of has like more low end to it. There's like a little more body to it. But once you bring it up past noon, it starts to introduce feedback into the circuit and the flange really sticks out. So it's pretty apparent. Everybody's favorite effects, right? Chorus and flange, of course. Of course. Should I just end right now after repeating that? Last mode, rotary. Big fan of kind of the Leslie simulator, and in the guitar world, like pre-existing effects that I really loved is a unipod. But you know, there's quite a few like Leslie simulator pedals, but I don't feel like they're ever really voiced for guitar. Like they sound, to me, they sound really good, like if you use them on keyboards, synthesizer, stuff like that. But when you plug a guitar in, I always feel like it's a little hollow, like it's missing something. So I wanted to try to create something that is like maybe a little more exaggerated, but not so much that it's like over the top. So I kind of set to work with this. I matched the two speeds, like the what do you call it? Like the drum and the rotor are rotating at different directions, different rates to create like the Doppler effect of the Leslie cabinet. I matched those, and then also kind of changed the amplitude that each one is going at to exaggerate it a little bit. And one kind of cool thing about this is with the preset functionality, you can set it up so like you're playing in live mode at like a slow rate, and then you can activate the preset while you're playing, and it will kind of mimic that like Leslie ramping effect. Usually, like if you see a Leslie pedal, there's a slow, fast switch. It doesn't quite do the like ramp up, but it fakes it pretty well. So I'll show you how that works. That's the rotary effect. I was getting a telemarketer call while I was doing it. It was super cool.
Want to buy some pedals?
Yeah. Shit, I should have answered it. Oh, I can call them back. Get them involved in this demo. I guess I should mention too, like the way that you save and recall these presets, there's a little button on it, save and recall. It's lit up. When it's green, it's in live mode. When it's red, it's in a preset mode. To save a preset, you just kind of set the three controls. You can also assign the expression pedal to one of the controls. It'll save that information. It'll be different in each preset. And then, you know, like what mode you're in and all that. It'll save all that information. All you do is hold that switch down for 2 seconds. It'll flash saved. Then there's 2 ways to recall it. You can either just tap that button again. It'll go red, and then you're wherever the preset switch is set. That's the preset it'll bring up. Or while you're playing, when the pedal is on, you can just hold down the bypass switch and it'll go into the preset that's selected. So that's like the easy way to do it while you're playing. Let's see. It's a Place to Bury Stranger shirt. We'll talk about the time shadows. Very stoked about this one. This is a collaboration with Death by Audio. Ollie, the founder of that company, is the guitarist in A Place to Bury Strangers, which is an incredible band. If you've never seen them before, you should totally see them. They'll blow your mind. Death by Audio is also like my favorite modern pedal company. I love what they do. I love their aesthetic. They're great people. I love all the pedals they make. And it was a real honor to work with them on this. The original version of Time Shadows came out in 2020. In Reverb.com put out a movie about pedals called The Pedal Movie. And we're asking brands that were in it to like collaborate together on a pedal that they would then release as like a limited edition to help promote the movie. And you know, I pretty much demanded to work with Death by Audio. It seemed like a great chance to do something like that. And Ollie and I independently worked on some programs, which became the Time Shadows. The first one came out in November 2020. It's limited to 1,000, and it sold out pretty much like immediately. And then the prices on Reverb kind of skyrocketed. They were ridiculous prices for the pedal. So kind of knew that someday we'd really like to release it. And like once we had developed this like platform that we had built these other pedals on, it seemed like a no-brainer. Like this would be perfect for that. There was a number of settings on this pedal that was like, I wish we put expression control over this. And you know, you can get a lot of different sounds out of both my mode and Ollie's mode. So the presets like really come in handy for that. One weird thing about the original one is it only had 2 modes. There's a little toggle switch. You can choose EQD or Death by Audio. But if you forced the switch in the middle, you could access this weird hidden mode that is totally unintentional. It was an accident. The pedal, like the programs themselves, it's a digital pedal, it's DSP, and the programs are read off an EEPROM. We built all of them in-house, so we just used a copier because we were just doing 1,000 of them. It was just easier to do it that way. And apparently, I turned it in. The master EEPROM was an old EEPROM, and it was a program that I was working on that I had no idea what it was at first. But I was told by one of our employees, like, hey, you can do this. And they were modding their own pedals, like on the production floor to like have a 3-way switch so they could access this thing. And I had no idea. I was like, what are you guys talking about? This third mode. And it was it's a weird half-baked pitch shifting delay. It wasn't like a completed thing. So I kind of dug through all the files that I had been working on from around that time and finally found it and finished it. And then we put it in the new version as an accessible mode, and that's the middle mode. I'll start with that one so you can kind of hear what it sounds like. No, you can't. You can't hear what it sounds like. I'm going to unplug that for a second. What happened? Sorry. I had assigned the expression control to the wrong control. All right. You get the idea. Instant circus music. You can do a bunch of cool stuff with this mode. I think like if you first plug it in and you're just like, it sounds like crap. Like, you know, like maybe you love that. I don't know. But like, it's definitely like something that like you would play to how the pedal works, you know, and I think you can make some really interesting stuff with it. And one thing that like we figured out like in the testing process, like if you run drum machines through this on this mode, it does a lot of really cool stuff. I don't know why in particular a drum machine like really makes a good use of this. And what is happening is it's a delay, two 500 millisecond delays running in parallel. One is shifting a third up with every repeat, and one is shifting 1 cent down, which is kind of a weird combination, but it works really well together, I think, anyway. But it was, I was kind of happy to actually finish this thing and make something somewhat usable to some people out of it. I will show you what the Earthquaker mode is. It's pretty much exactly as it was when we first made it. Should explain it maybe first. It takes the guitar and turns it into a square wave fuzz, which then runs into a low pass filter, into a VCA and a delay. The delay is post VCA, and then it is envelope controlled. In the filter frequency and the VCA, like the VCA is controlled faster than the filter is. So it's really responsive to your playing dynamics, but it also does a lot of stuff at once. It's a very kind of like symphonic effect, I feel like, and you can dial it in for like a bunch of different, like if you turn the time and the span is repeats, time is delay time, filter controls, in our mode anyway, the sensitivity of the envelope. If you turn it down, you can kind of like make like a almost cello like or like bowed guitar kind of sound. So that's kind of my favorite way to use this thing, is this like no delay kind of bowed murky guitar. And like if I use this, I'll just plug this guitar in for a second. So you were right, I used 2 guitars. It was great. Thanks for suggesting it. It's just higher output pickups. It reacts a lot more like, it'll get to the peak a lot quicker. That's the point. And last, I'll show you the Death by Audio mode. So I just assigned the expression control to the filter. I've had Ollie explain how this functions to me a number of times, and I still don't fully understand exactly what is happening. I wish I could repeat the awesome way that he explains it, but I can't. What the filter is controlling is like a filter and simultaneously like a manual flange width, as well as something else. I can't quite exactly tell what is happening, but like if it's all the way down, you get this like really resonant, murky delay. But then you end up with this like really crystallized kind of bright delay. And then it has this really like awesome frequency response, like right in the middle. It's like very vocal sounding. But then if you run it into distortion, which is insane. It's awesome. So yeah, it's like Time Shadows in a nutshell. Very stoked again to work with Ollie on this. It was a super cool experience. What else? So we did like a version update to a pedal that has been out for a long time, the Spatial Delivery, which is an envelope controlled filter. What I thought was unique about this pedal to begin with, like the programs that are in the pedal, is just envelope up, down, and then the middle mode, which is sample and hold, which is an effect that's like super common in the synthesizer world, but there really weren't a lot of guitar pedals doing it. But there was a really early one, and it was the Maestro Filter Sample and Hold, which is an incredible pedal that goes for an incredible amount of money on the used market, because they really didn't make that many of them, and they're kind of hard to come by. But it is one of my favorite effects of all time. To me, it just sounds like computers talking to each other, and this is that sound. I love that sound. So I really wanted to create a pedal that had that in it. And in addition to that, it also has a standard, like envelope filter sound. I'm not, like, I know a lot of people, they plug in an envelope filter and there's like, I'm just not one of those players. I use it for like, kind of to create like a vocal kind of effect to it. And then it will do a downward sweeping, which is a very kind of synthy sounding effect. So you get that. One thing that's pretty cool, I think, about the Spatial Delivery is most envelope filters are just low pass filters. This you can sweep continuously from a high pass filter through band pass to a low pass. So you can kind of like really fine tune it, like, so it's not like too peaky on your amp or like with what other pedals you're using. And you can also fine tune the resonance. The resonance will get to a point where it will kind of self oscillate and get like really whistly in the top end. And then it also has a control for the sensitivity, so you can dial it in with whatever pickups you use. I'll show you real quick like what it sounds like to sweep from the high pass to the low pass. This is like right around bandpass, and it's kind of like the frequency range that most wah pedals really sit in. And that's the low pass, which is pretty common for envelope filters. So it seemed like kind of a no-brainer to like put the Spatial Delivery on this platform where you can save these presets and then you can quickly go between like sample and hold and just a standard envelope filter. I had actually built myself a very, very early prototype of this like 7 years ago for my band, so I could do the sample and hold thing in the really spacey parts and then do like filter sweeps to like build up to stuff. So that was kind of the idea to get into this. Let's talk about the last pedal in this series is the Ledges, is a reverb pedal. So the three modes in ledges are room, hall, and plate. And room can, there's three controls: mix, which just kind of controls the reverb mix, like how much you want in the signal; damping, which controls the high end content of it, like so how long it'll ring, how muted it will get; and then the length, which controls the length, the reverb decay. In the room mode, it'll kind of go from like a short, boxy kind of wood room sound to like a longer, kind of bigger tile room. It's a preview of the plate. All right. So it's like a smaller room with no damping on it, so you can kind of roll that off. I'll put the damping kind of in the middle. So you kind of get like a bigger, like brighter room with like a little bit later reflections. Middle mode is hall, just like it, well, kind of sounds exactly what it's called. It sounds like a hall. So that's at its longest setting, again with like the medium damping. You get like a lot of later reflections, and they're a little bit darker, and they kind of get darker as they decay. And a shorter setting is more like like this. So the reflections are a little bit more immediate, a little brighter, and it kind of picks up where the room leaves off. And that's sort of the same way the plate works. It picks up where the hall leaves off, except for there's a lot of kind of early reflections bouncing around. I really like the setting with like the length all the way up and no damping, so you can hear all the bright reflections kind of pinging around. Just plays itself. Again, this pedal is buffer bypass, so these tails will naturally decay over time. They are kind of programmed to naturally fade themselves out after about 20 seconds, so it won't go on for eternity, but you get the idea. Next, I'm going to cover this disaster transport. Give you a little bit of backstory on this pedal. It's one of our earliest pedals. It was one of the ones that I was making when I was just building stuff by myself in the basement. At the time, it seems really weird, but there really weren't that many like delays in the boutique market, especially modulated ones. There's just like less than 5 that I could really think of. In this pedal is a digital delay, voice to be analog. It's like pretty bright in the repeats, very mid-rangey, but it had a pretty unique kind of modulation. It used like a ramp wave, so it would like slowly climb, and then steep drop off. Slowly climb, steep drop off. I'll show you what that sounds like. So arguably, this is maybe our first weird effect. But you could dial that back to be a little bit more subtle. That was like, maximum intensity. So it can still be a little tame. This pedal ended up being like kind of one of the driving factors for people like noticing Earthquaker and like getting stoked about us. And like I was getting a lot of emails, a lot of orders for these, and I got to making about 80 of these pedals and then realized it was killing me. It was like a lot of parts, a lot of like, I had to drill so many little holes. There was a lot of off-board wiring, all this stuff, and I was like I just could not keep up with it. So I did the weird thing of discontinuing the thing that people were really interested in because I could not keep up with making it. Makes no sense to me now, but it made a lot of sense to me then. Like, you want this? Well, I can't make it anymore. Too bad. Coincidentally, when we, well, not coincidentally, it was totally intentional. When got my first employee, Jeff France, in 2010, brought this pedal back, but it was a redesigned version of the circuit. And in addition to bringing Disaster Transport back, we made a small version called Disaster Transport Junior. And then eventually, we made an even bigger version, and that was called Disaster Transport Senior. Then we discontinued all of those, and then we brought back the first Disaster Transport, and that is very confusing for a lot of people because it's like 4 pedals that are totally different from each other, and they all have the same name. The name is also the name of an old ride at an amusement park by us called Cedar Point. And every delay pedal that we make is named after a roller coaster at this park. There's Avalanche Run, Dispatch Master, Space Spiral, which is actually not a roller coaster, but it was adjacent to Avalanche Run. And then we kind of ran out of cool names from rides at Cedar Point, so the most recent one is called Silos. Has nothing to do with a roller coaster. Anyway, we've been doing this kind of series called the Legacy Reissue Series, which is, we'll do short run reissues of old pedals that have been discontinued. This year is our 20th anniversary, which is wild to me. And in that time, we have released a lot of pedals, and they can't all stay in production. So, sometimes you got to discontinue something to bring something new in. But sometimes, things are cool, and you kind of want them to come back. And that's kind of the idea behind this Legacy Reissue Series. What kind of sparked Disaster Transport is we would occasionally get like an old one in for repair. And like our repair tech would bring it up to me and be like, hey, we got an old Disaster Transport, do you want to check it out? And you're like, yeah. And I always thought it was really cool. Like I liked it more than I liked the later versions of it. So we decided to do this. I did like a couple small mods to it. I added a third rate mode for the modulation, and I added a mode called Bend, which makes the modulation a little bit more subtle, and the stretch is kind of the original dragging kind of pitch shift. So I'll show you real quick like the difference if we flip that switch with the same intensity setting. So that's stretch. And this kind of like rounds it out just a little bit. So if you back the intensity off even more, it'll sound more like a traditional, like kind of sine wave modulated delay. that's disaster transport. Speaking of the Legacy Reissue series, we just released another one on Tuesday, so just a couple days ago. It's this one, Dirt Transmitter. They have one here. How many? I don't know. I think two, three. They have three. We only made 1,000 of them. Not very many made it over here. They got it. This pedal was kind of a stop-start pedal for us. It was a very early pedal. I think the first one came out in like 2007, but we made like 6 of them. It was like a 3-knob version. Then for a short while, I made like a small box. Sorry, small box one was a 3-knob. Then we made like 80 in this format, and I always thought this was the coolest looking of all of them. I just really like the way that the controls sit and everything with the graphics. And then like maybe 1,000 or 1,500 or something of a kind of a mid-size enclosure, a more standard pedal, and then it was discontinued, I think, in 2015. So we brought this one back. We did 1,000 of them. 3 here. Get it while you can. 20% off. I'm a great salesman.
Free t-shirt.
Free t-shirts, all around with the pedal. Buy a free t-shirt if you buy a pedal.
I remember that Keith Richards bought one of those. He went
Yes.
to Cruton in Los Angeles and played through 1,000,000+ pedals, and that's the one he ended up buying.
Specifically to play Satisfaction.
Wow.
What's happening?
Gavin texted him.
Oh, got it. You look very concerned for a second.
I need to send him the Airbnb info.
Oh, got it. Yeah, cool. Keith Richards.
Yeah, he bought
You
it.
bought one.
Yeah.
Now don't you want one?
Satisfaction.
Yeah, I don't know how to play that song. I'm a latecomer to the Rolling Stones, too. Anyway, Dirt Transmitter, Keith Richards, buy one, you'll sound just like him, you'll live forever. Yeah, it's gonna be awesome in 100 years, right? Things are going great. Don't you want to see where it ends?
More heroin.
So you guys don't vote in November?
What's that? Oh, Jesus Christ. This is a nightmare.
Yeah.
I don't even want to talk about that. Just pretend like that doesn't exist. We might be living here in December. I don't know. But, back to the pedals. Plumes. You've probably heard of Plumes. It's our most popular pedal. So weird one for me because I don't like tube screamers, and it's totally based on a tube screamer. How this pedal came about is when Julie started working at Earthquaker in 2012 full time. We were going to all these trade shows, and people were calling and emailing, and because we were a boutique pedal company, everybody is like, which one's your tube screamer? Which one's your tube screamer? Because you're required by law in the United States to have at least one pedal based on a tube screamer if you're going to call yourself a pedal company. But we didn't. And it was like a thing that I was like, yeah, we don't, because I hate it. And then Julie's like, have you ever thought about working on one? And I was like, ugh. And then I kind of changed my mind. It's like, maybe it's a fun idea to like work on a circuit that I know that I don't like, find out why I don't like it, and then turn it into something I do like. So I did, and that pedal became Palisades. Which we discontinued eventually. But if anybody has ever seen it, it's a big pedal that can do a lot of stuff the tube screamer can do, except for sound like a tube screamer. It's a lot more immediate. There's more low end. It doesn't have the mid-range hump. But it's kind of like a tube screamer lab where you can change the frequency response of like where it's clipping, change all the clipping diodes. It has 2 gain stages. It has an output boost. And then the tone control works a lot different than a typical tube screamer. But in the process of designing the Palisades, I had made the Plumes. It was actually kind of the first attempt of like, maybe this will do it. And what I found is I kept personally going back and playing this prototype for the Plumes like at home. I was using it all the time. It was a much simpler, easier to dial in kind of thing that, you know, had a little bit more of the characteristics of a tube screamer, but not the stuff I didn't like, I guess. In particular, the mode that I really like is mode 1, which uses some LEDs as clipping diodes, and what you get is a little bit more of like kind of a Marshall tone. It's a little bit tighter. You still kind of get a little bit of the pronounced mid-range of a tube screamer, but it's not as overpowering. So you kind of, what it sounds like is what people were using a tube screamer for, which is to kind of push their tube amp into overdrive. So it was just doing that all in, the one mode. In addition to that, like the other things that I would attribute, like our kind of big changes to it, is it has like an internal bipolar power supply, which just makes the signal bigger, for lack of a better term, and like has a lot more headroom to it, so it can get really loud. And that's really obvious in the middle mode, which removes the clipping diodes. The signal doesn't get lopped off at either end, and it stays strong. And you can really use that. This is a good mode to use as like a clean boost. And that's with the gain at 0 and the volume like at 1, and what that's doing is just pushing this amp into overdrive. And then the third mode is kind of a traditional like silicon diode. I can't quite remember off the top of my head if it's asymmetrical in a stock tube screamer, but it is in this pedal. And that's where you kind of get the thing that the tube screamer does. It sounds like your clean signal is underneath your dirty signal. And you get more of your pick attack in that mode. And then a lot of people were using this pedal. Seeing a lot of bass players use it, but it really lops off the low end. So we decided to make one specifically for bass. It's a bass plumes, and it is called BLUMES. And what that does is it kind of has the same tonal character of the plumes, but is much better for like drop tune guitars and bass. It just has a lower, heavier frequency response. And I'll kind of set these two pedals the same and go back and forth. You can hear the difference right away. It's both on, but you hear it. It's just better if you want more low end response. It also works great on guitar if you want it to be heavier and have a tighter low end.
What do you call plumes?
Plumes. I just thought it was cool. Because I can. Yeah, there's quite a number of our pedals are called what they are, because I was like, that sounds cool. And then when it's like intentional, you end up with dumb puns like blooms or spatial delivery, because it's an envelope filter. Yeah. I already forgot my earlier dad jokes about the chorus. I was going to try it again. Except, well, maybe I'll talk about this one now. The Rainbow Machine sounds like exactly what it's called, the Rainbow Machine. It was actually named after our daughter when she was like.
Yeah, she made a drawing for us and said, "This is a rainbow machine."
Yeah,
I've been trying to think of a name for this for a long time.
Yeah, I've been trying to
That's
think of a name for like a year, and then she came home from like 2nd or 3rd grade and like handed me this really ridiculous looking like rainbow gazebo that was like flying through the air. And I was like, what's this? She was like, it's a rainbow machine, and then just walked away. And I was like,
Yes.
awesome. There's actually, the Rainbow Machine has a little movie made about it with a bunch of like different artists who use it. She's in it. Uh, so you can see her talking about it. It's like probably like 5 years old, something like that. Rainbow Machine, if you've ever watched any demos, you've probably seen people do the thing that it does, which makes a magic pixie dust kind of noise, which I'll save for the end. But at the heart of the Rainbow Machine, I don't know if anyone's played it or whatever, it's really just a pitch shifter that goes third up, fourth down. I'll show you like its most basic functionality. Third up. And then down. And then it does every atonal thing in between because it's kind of just a smooth. So that was with, there's three controls across the top. Primary, which is the volume control, like the output volume control for the first pitch shifted signal. Then pitch, which sets the pitch. And then secondary, and what secondary is the first pitch shifted signal is fed back into itself, and then the output of that is secondary. And it's kind of a weird, interesting, sometimes atonal effect. Getting closer to the sound that people think of when they hear the Rainbow Machine, if they're familiar with it. Bottom controls, magic. I'll save for later. Everybody knows what magic is. Tone, simple low pass filter, and then tracking. And what tracking does is like the audible effect, like the effect you hear sounds like a delay, like some latency. But what it's really doing is like slowing down the clock that controls the processor, so it's kind of like a sample rate reduction in a way. But like the audible effect is really delay. Closer. Magic takes all that, feeds it all back in on itself. I can't think of any better term than magic for that. That's what it sounds like, magic. How I like to use it is like this. Dial that pitch back just a little bit. So if you kind of like slightly detune it or slightly get the pitch up just a little bit, it'll either climb or descend when you hit the magic. And pretty much all of our pedals have this switching functionality that we call switching, flexi switching, which is like momentary or latching style switching. So you can just like tap it on like a regular switch, or you can just hold it down for as long as you want the effect to be on, and when you take your foot off, it'll turn off. It's really useful for things like this if you want to like kind of just make that thing like climb real quick and then just go away. Somehow it just feels more like tactile than just tapping it on and off. It like feels like you're doing something. So I really like that functionality on this pedal. But that effect kind of reminds me a lot of, there's like an old effect called automatic double tracking, which is supposed to sound like two guitars playing. And really it kind of sounds like a chorus with no movement to it. And I think that this does a really good job. If I'm not mistaken, that's like how they get like the Van Halen snare drum sound, like an effect like that, but they detune it slightly so it sounds really big. So I'm not telling you that you'll be just like Alex Van Halen if you get a Rainbow Machine. Not Eddie, Alex. But you might. I don't know. Who knows? And you'll be just like Keith Richards. Really pushing the weird references tonight. One more pedal to cover. ZOAR. ZOAR is a distortion fuzz / overdrive that is named after a weird small town south of us. It's like a separatist, like religious community that is now just a historical site with some weird old buildings that they have like a Halloween haunted house thing going on. Also, they have a big man-made trash mountain, which is super cool. But the town is called ZOAR, and ZOAR is an awesome name for this town. It sounds tough, but it's not. I don't know. Anyway, ZOAR was, throughout the history of Earthquaker, like if there's like one effect that I wish that I invented, it is the fuzz face. I think it is the most perfect effect. If you get a good one, like it can do everything for you just by slightly rolling back the volume. Like you can get, it's like the best overdrive tone to my ears, like just fuzz face everything all the way up, roll back the volume a little bit, and it's just like a very musical, like kind of harmonically rich tone. ZOAR is kind of my attempt at like getting that plus a whole lot more. Like, you know, just being able to dial in like really harsh distortion, really bass heavy fuzz, really natural amp like breakup, and just like kind of being able to do it all, I guess, like everything you would kind of want to do with a fuzz face plugged into like kind of like a Marshall amp. While I'm not going to claim that that's exactly what it sounds like, it is a really useful, like versatile fuzz / distortion pedal. And the kind of the secret to it is the weight control, and the weight control just it dictates how much low end frequency is allowed to feed the pedal. Right now I have it set kind of how I would always use it, which is like slightly mid scooped, the bass around 1, the treble just between noon and 1, and I kind of have the weight at like 3 o'clock, gain all the way up. I'll put a little more treble in. And if you roll the gain off just a little bit,